So, you know who knows everything about me? Google. They know when I wake up. They know when I go to bed. They know what I search for. They know everything I'm interested in. They know where I eat. They know where I sleep. It's it's really kind of creepy that Google knows everything. And is it creepy that they know everything about me, or is it just creepy that they know so much about a single topic? Well, you know who knows a lot, pretty much everything about mobile? Vlad and Chris. Are they creepy? We're going to find out. Stay tuned for the Verge Mobile Show. Hi, I'm Dieter Baum.
I'm Ron Burgundy.
And I'm Chris Ziegler.
And this is the Verge Mobile Show. It is the 6th episode of it for the week of July 2nd. And we have got so much Google to talk about, I can't even handle it.
Do you really think I'm creepy, Dieter?
No, I'm just posing the question, is it creepy that you know so much about mobile? That's all.
Well, I'm personally offended. I don't know about Vlad. I can't speak for Vlad.
I mean, Vlad isn't here, so that's cool.
It's true. It's Ron Burgundy. I forgot. I'm sorry. And you're living in San Diego, and you have the most amazing mustache on the face of the planet. Actually, right. Vlad, so you know what?
I'm really using my imagination.
Vlad, I want to see you in a mustache. This is very important to me.
Ooh.
This is very, very important. We need to make this happen.
I've had beards.
Beard is...
A mustache by itself doesn't last on my face longer than half a day. I just start feeling like an 80s porn star.
Like Ron Burgundy.
That's exactly what I'm going for. This is getting weird. Let's talk phones.
Let's not be creepy. Let's talk phones. That's right.
So, I mean, what else is there to talk about? But I mean, there is other stuff we could talk about. But let's just Google I/O and Jelly Bean and the Nexus Q and I mean, I don't even know where to start. And this is partially because I decided to wait till the last minute to handle the layout. And actually, I'm talking about my Jelly Bean review. I also waited because I wanted to give myself a ton of time with Google Now, which because it gets better as you spend time with it. So I didn't want to kick something out right away. I wanted to give it a chance to get to know me, which is very sweet.
Right.
Well, let's talk about the event itself. We had a big team there. I was there. Josh was there. Sean was there. Scott was there. Jordan was there. Justin was there. We had a bunch of people there.
What was the atmosphere? What was the atmosphere? Was it as crazy as it looked from the outside?
It was insane the first day. They didn't give press a separate line, and I know I shouldn't complain about not having a separate special line for press because I've done plenty of events not getting to even be in the special line for press when there is one. But they basically just like filled up the entire first floor of the Moscone Center with developers. Like it was wall to wall people. And then, we went up one set of escalators and then went around a hall and lined up in the hall on the second floor. And then they stopped that, and then the line merged in a really awkward way. And then to get up to the keynote, we had to go up the third set of escalators, and everybody's really agitating and waiting to get up there because they were kind of late. In fact, they started the keynote before everybody was even sitting down. And so since everybody was pushing up against the stanchions, they opened it up, and the Google guy literally went, "Let's go!" and turned and threw his arm back and started sprinting to the escalators. And we're like, well, I guess that's what we're doing now. We're sprinting. It was nuts. Like they were really, really excited to make us run, which was dangerous.
Somehow there were no riots or fist fights.
Yeah.
As far as I can tell.
Well, that's because everybody was there. I mean, everybody was there to get the insane amount of swag that Google gave away. They gave away a Galaxy Nexus, a Nexus 7, a Nexus Q, and a Chrome box.
See, here's the thing.
These guys
go ahead.
Okay, we interrupted each other about 3 times. But what I was going to say is these guys aren't fools. As members of the press, I don't think we're paying anything to be there. But most developers are paying a fairly chunky fee to be there.
Yeah.
So maybe you do want to riot. Maybe you do want to throw down. But presumably they did that on maybe the day 2 keynote. after they collected the day one swag, after they got through all the information.
But there was still day two swag. There was still day two swag. On day 2, they got the Chrome box.
See, then the people are just too efficient and too rational about it. Because I really, that's a good point, actually. Like, all of these events, and particularly I remember the Galaxy Nexus event when Google and Samsung hosted it in Hong Kong. And it was an absolutely massive crush in front of the doors. And everybody pushed and crushed into one another. But again, nobody was throwing punches. Like, there was plenty of reasons for people to get agitated to the point of fighting. But people were like, actually, I'm here to collect information and see this really awesome new thing. So maybe I'll save the fighting till later.
Now, I'm there to fight. I'm there to throw down. And that's why I always bring a blade of at least 4 inches to these events.
Well, there was extreme sports. So after they got done with the keynote and all the announcements, which I promise you we're actually going to talk about, Sergey Brin runs on stage in an impromptu, totally unscripted moment, and wanted to show off Google Glass. And so they had not just skydivers, but the dudes wearing the wingsuits. They jumped out of a blimp or a dirigible or a aircraft.
It was
ship.
Fine.
What? No, it was the second day it was a blimp. I'm not sure about the first day.
Oh?
Anyway, it was an airship. The second day was definitely an airship. What I'm getting to is they did it twice. They parachuted on the roof of the building. They got on dirt bikes. Then they went over and another dude rappelled down the side of the building. And then they rode bikes again through Moscone Center, through the crowd, and up on stage. They did it twice because, the first time wasn't enough.
Right.
Wow. So, actually thinking about it now, I can't believe that it's only been a week, or rather that Google I/O happened within the past week. Just because we previewed it on the last podcast/show, but it just feels like it's so massive and so comprehensive in terms of what Google introduced and showed us, that it kind of feels like it's further back in time. I mean, we had the Nexus 7 review, and everybody has delved really deeply into that new device, and it's shockingly impressive. Again, we'll find time to discuss it. And there was all the Nexus Q stuff, and then today, Android 4.1. It's actually surprising how much Google managed to squeeze into those 2 days. Don't you guys think?
Yeah, for sure. Although, to be fair, I mean, there was only so much that they could say about 4.1 because it is only a 0.1, and they didn't describe every little thing about it. But let's just get into it. Let's get into Jelly Bean. So it's basically the same look and feel as Ice Cream Sandwich. It basically, it's the same look and feel. The main things that they did is the first thing was called Project Butter, where they increased the responsiveness of the screen by standardizing a frame rate. They set up this triple buffering so that the GPU and the CPU and the screen could operate independently and they wouldn't slow each other down. And I forget what the third Project Butter thing was.
Oh, the net responsiveness.
Touch responsiveness. That's right. So the net effect is that it feels way better. It feels way better than 4.0, and 4.0, of course, felt way better than 2.3. And I know in the video on the review, it doesn't quite come through. And I mean, that might be a frame rate thing. I had a heck of a time embedding that or encoding that video. But the multitasking menu, there's almost no lag there. It's really good. It's not iOS level, and you can't deny that once you use it. It's not quite as you moving a piece of paper on a screen as iOS, but it's really close. And it's close enough where I'm not really complaining about it. And I wasn't really complaining about it with 4.0, but I didn't know how bad I had it with 4.1. It's great. And what's really impressive about that is they did it on a Galaxy Nexus, which is 8 months old. They didn't have to throw massive hardware at it.
Yeah, it's an old OMAP 4. One of the really impressive things to me about iOS has always been the fact that even going back to iOS 1, or iPhone OS at the time, the original iPhone, it still felt very responsive then. And I think that's because Apple is very good at employing creative visual techniques to make you believe that the device is more responsive than it actually is. And I always think back to the way the browser worked. On the original iPhone, you'd scroll a page around and it would instantly go to checkerboards, but it would never start stuttering and it would never feel like it was lagging behind your touch. And that is so important. I would much rather have that checkerboard effect than the perception that the phone isn't instantly responding to my touch. And I think that Google is just now getting around to recognizing that and fixing it. And I recently heard a presentation from NVIDIA where, and Vlad, we may have talked about this in the past, but in Integra 3, they did some specific things to try to address that as well. So hopefully that's finally solved or very close to solved.
Yeah, regarding Integra 3, I recall at CES, NVIDIA showed off a particular touch technology, which I believe is called Direct Touch, but don't quote me on that. It's something like that. They gave it a particular branding name. And it was specifically about the lag between your touch and the smoothness of response with touchscreens, which at the time sounded intriguing, but again, we never really got a chance to test it out in full or to see any, really engaging demos of it. But there's every chance that this could be something that Google has looked at least, if not integrated. Obviously, NVIDIA would probably want that to be a Tegra 3 only thing, which wouldn't make it universal to Android 4.1 as a software. But it's good to see that Google is addressing that exact same thing. And I also think it's very easy to underrate the importance of Project Butter. Like, okay, first of all, it's easy because it's got such a silly name. Let's just agree. Like, I don't care if Google continues to give these dorky names for the next 20 years. Every time a new one comes up, I will say it. It's a silly name. So Jelly Bean is silly. Ice Cream Sandwich was triple silly because it has 3 words for crying out loud. It wasn't even efficient in terms of space. And our Project Butter is, again, it's unbelievable. Like, this is a multi-billion-dollar business we're talking about, and a critical aspect of improving your competitiveness in it, and then you call it butter.
Yeah,
I mean, it's nuts. It's nuts.
If you're talking about something that involves a touch screen, do you really want to be thinking about that in conjunction with butter? I mean, I get buttery smooth, but like butter's greasy, yo. I mean, it's just kind of gross.
Right. I mean, there are so many, hip words. Like, you can use Greek mythology, you can use futurism, you can use Tolkien words and names. You can just grab anything. They're like this. There's so much mythology that geeky folks can get into. It doesn't have to be food. It's just talking. But beyond that, what I think is important is user interface responsiveness is still, to me, like the number one thing, the paramount thing with any operating system. This is also the paramount complaint that I had about Symbian on the previous podcast with the 808 POV. And I think Google going after it again with 4.1, even though, as Dieter said, 4.0 was a massive improvement. I mean, as far as I'm concerned, 4.0 fixed 90% of all lag problems with Android, with just the basic user interface. And going after it again with 4.1 shows that Google is really keen on maximizing responsiveness everywhere. And I can tell you, once you spend time with Ice Cream Sandwich, you do find areas where the phones lag. Like with the Galaxy Nexus, perfect example is as soon as you jump into your contacts list, if you start scrolling really quickly, you find lag. As soon as you jump into emails, if you start scrolling really quickly, you find lag. Like when it has to both load things up and start scrolling through them, it lags. Like the animation starts to break up. Forget about standardizing frame rates. You go down to like 2-3 frames a second for like a split second and it fixes itself. So there's definitely room for improvement. There's definitely areas where Google can, raise the bar, raise the performance. It's raised it to 60 frames a second with Project Butter, which is great. I mean, you really are going to see extremely smooth and consistent frame rates there. And I also noticed in your video, Dieter, that the browser, which is another really important part, perform smoother and faster, again on the exact same hardware, which is great.
Yeah, that was actually one of the things that surprised me. I mean, to be clear, I mean, we're talking about sort of responsiveness and the feel of the OS. In terms of raw benchmarks, I ran all of the benchmarks on Android 4.0 on a Galaxy Nexus and Android 4.1 on a Galaxy Nexus side by side on a fresh boot. And the numbers were pretty much identical. There was no real difference that could matter. But just scrolling around and especially just stuff popping up. So like the phone isn't like just faster, it just feels faster. And I mean, that's, exactly. Feels faster matters.
And that's the very core of the software. this is what, like, as far as I'm concerned, if you're going to improve your software, make the one thing that is fundamental and constant to it, which is the user interface, better, right? Because then it's just a universal upgrade. It's kind of like, you know, I know people complain when we reference Apple, but it's the truth. It's kind of like an Apple upgrade where it seems minor, just, you know, it's like a one sentence, okay, we just stuck a massive new Retina display in the laptop. But then you go and you use it and you're like, actually, this makes a huge difference in day-to-day use. Okay, maybe not the Retina display in laptops immediately, but you know what I'm saying, right?
Yeah.
Apple does these upgrades. They're really easy and quick to verbalize. And then because it's not a massive list of upgrades, people think, well, it's just one thing. How can it matter so much? And I think like this is exactly what Google's doing. And it's the absolute perfect thing that Google should be doing.
I would actually argue.
Go ahead, Chris.
I think that Project Butter is very important, but I would actually argue that Google Now is a big deal. Not just it transcends Android. It's a big deal for 4.1, but I think that this is the culmination of everything Google has been doing for the past 15 years. Is Google Now, and it's only going to get crazier and crazier.
Yeah, I remember Amit Singhal, who's one of the Google fellows. He did a talk in London a couple of years ago that I attended, and he was talking about the development of search from the beginning of Google, and then point 6. So he had 6 major bullet points of development. Point 6 was search without search. And he was talking about exactly Google Now. Like he was saying, predicting things like when your flight will be, traffic, predicting things like you might be hungry, here are restaurants, you might want to buy something, you might want to go and pick up your dry cleaning, etc.
Yeah, so you're not familiar with what Google Now is. I mean, it when you jump into it, it gives you like cards that sort of display ambient information. So I just pop mine up here. I've got the mobile podcast, I've got the weather, and what else have I got? I guess that's it right now because it knows I'm at work and I'm going to be here for a while. But when it gets close to quitting time or what it thinks is quitting time, it'll give me directions home. Via transit, it's got restaurants nearby. It really wants me to go to Mars Bar restaurant, like in the worst way. It keeps on popping that one up. But what's interesting about Google Now to me is, one, we've been hearing this promise for so long. I talked about this on the Vergecast, that we would get phones that would magically give us information. And now finally Google's actually trying it. And two, like, I don't know who else could pull this off. Like, who else knows enough about me? Who else is collecting enough information from me, from the phone and from other metrics, and has an ecosystem to support it, to give me this kind of functionality? Who else is plugged into the transit system in San Francisco and has a robust set of maps and locations and knows what I'm searching for online and yada 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 yada. I mean, Apple's, I suppose, close, but I feel like it doesn't have the sort of raw computational expertise to try and pull it off. So, like, it's a uniquely Google product because it takes pretty much everything Google does and combines it into one experience, or at least it's trying to do that. And it's a uniquely Google product because, like, I don't know who else could even attempt it and have it not come off as a total flop. Because it's not a total flop. It's pretty good. It's not changing my life, but I'm checking it a couple of times a day. And at first it was like, oh, I don't care about this, but there's fewer and fewer of those moments as time goes on.
It's funny you mentioned the Mars bar thing, Dieter, because it makes me wonder. It actually kind of concerns me to think that this is the next generation of Google AdWords, right? Like, companies are going to be able to buy.
That's a terrible vision, Chris.
No, doesn't mean it's not true.
Right, exactly. It is a terrible vision, but I'm saying companies are going to be able to buy in. Companies are going to be able to buy into your consciousness, basically. I mean, that's what this boils down to.
Okay, but to play, what's the opposite of devil's advocate? The positive advocate. Does one of those exist? Advocate. Okay, so to play angel's advocate, I do feel like getting back to the idea of search without search. I mean, Google now taps into Google's core competency, which is, as Dieter says, data collection and search, indexing, etc. I mean, still, ultimately, Google now is just a web-connected service that gets you essentially like search information that you need. It just kind of tries to do it preemptively, tries to do it proactively, tries to predict what you're actually going to want, right? So again, if Google didn't have its own search algorithms and indexing and crawlers, etc., you couldn't do it. So again, it's a unique functionality to Google. But if you go to Google search yourself, you find, yes, a whole bunch of companies are buying ads and listings, promoted listings, but they're clearly identified. So why would they? I mean, it should be possible. Okay, I mean, first of all, Google now is barely out of the door. So let's not curse it off as just the ad promotion platform. Google will probably be very, very cautious before it starts introducing ads. It will want it to flourish and develop before it adds ads. But then when it does, I imagine they will be kind of identifiable at least. Like, if not something you can opt out of, be identifiable.
Didn't Google switch to paid placement in shopping, or didn't they kind of backtrack on that? It's not quite as clear what is and isn't an ad in that part of Google.
Pay to play. That's right. I mean, everything that Google does is built around advancing the core cash cow, which is search. And Google now is clearly, even though we're just seeing the first glimmers of it, it's clearly the future of Google as a platform and as search as a product. And there's zero question in my mind that they are going to commercialize this product and turn it into a money-making platform for them. Well,
it's already commercialized. I mean, let's be clear. Every single search brings up web results, and those web results have ads.
Right, but I mean, there are many. Google now presents many new and interesting and quote-unquote smarter ways to integrate that, right? And the question is, how are they going to do that? How lightly are they going to tread in turning this into a new form of profit center for them?
No, hey, I was just thinking about something else here, which was again going back to Apple being the close competitor. Well, when Apple updated Siri for iOS 6, you notice that Apple's sources of information were all outside companies. So Siri being able to look up sports scores and player bios and things like that, it comes from Yahoo Sports. Movie reviews, Rotten Tomatoes. Restaurant reviews and things, Yelp. Google's strength, and the thing that Google's been building up is the fact that Google has brought everybody up. It bought Zagat, so it has restaurant reviews. It already has the maps and the search and all of that stuff already. So most of the stuff that comes into Google now is in-house. And that's a massive advantage.
And they tried to buy Yelp a few years ago, right? And that deal fell through. But at one time, that was part of their plan. But anyway, look, don't get me wrong. Don't get me wrong. I'm very bullish on Google now, and I think it is one of the most exciting things to happen in search and for Google as a company, maybe in forever. I'm just very concerned at how the commercialization of the platform is going to proceed over the next few years. We'll see.
Well, I mean, it's a valid concern.
What I said in the intro is total. Oh, let me just get this out real quick. Like, I wasn't joking that Google knows when I wake up. It knows where I live. It knows where I sleep. It knows where I work. It knows what I eat. It knows where I go every minute of the day because Google Maps is, I don't know if it's every minute, but I'm checking in. I'm opening your maps up all the time. It knows what I'm searching for.
There's one comfort for you, and that is the fact that Google doesn't care who you are. So
God.
It will keep anonymous data on you because it really, really doesn't care who you are. You're just a data point. And so long as it's able to sell data points as opposed to personally identifiable information, you're fine.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, fair enough. Actually, there's another ecosystem play that happened that we should really talk about, and because they spent a long time talking about Google Play, and this was specifically about the Nexus 7 as a Kindle competitor, yada yada yada. But they basically spent a good third of the time for the Nexus 7 talking about Google Play and pushing that ecosystem of movies and media and whatnot. And of course, there's the Nexus Q, which only works via Google Play. And I don't know, that feels like a little bit of an overreach here. I mean, I suppose they have to do it. They have to try. But Google now is like, yes, of course, Google should do this. This is interesting. But Google Play is like, well, Really? Do you really think you're going to beat Amazon at this game? Do you really think you're going to beat Apple at this game? I'm not really sure.
Well, there's no question that they want their own content ecosystem, and I mean, I can't blame them. That's one of the most profitable. Well, maybe profitable isn't the right word, but it's been a very profitable venture for Apple. It is an extremely profitable venture for Amazon, and for a company like Google to have to rely on Amazon or, geez, I don't know, Zinio, or I don't know who else to bring that content into a self-branded flagship, quote unquote, flagship device like the Nexus 7. I mean, that's just not going to fly, right? They need. I mean, Google's getting paid for all that content that customers are buying out of Google Play, and that's certainly part of the strategy.
I just can't envision Google not having a competitive software and media consumption store with the other guys. Yeah. It's just not possible. I mean, Microsoft is building up to do the same, whether it calls it Xbox or Zune or whatever the heck it wants to call the store, is going to try and do absolutely the same thing. It's the reason why Microsoft is also going into hardware. They're all kind of more or less building up to work into Apple's model. I mean, it's funny to say, but it's the truth. You know, Google now legitimately has a Nexus program, and the only thing that's consistent about the Nexus program is that it's Google branded hardware and Google marketed hardware, and that's one of the big highlights with the Nexus 7, and probably the reason why ASUS wanted to build the Nexus 7 is because Google is completely handling the marketing with that. So ASUS can save money there, even though it seems to be being produced at cost and sold at cost.
So we should talk a bit about the Nexus 7, because it sounds, certainly from Josh's review, I haven't played with the tablet personally, but Dieter, I know you'll be able to speak to this bit. It certainly sounds to me like this is the most exciting non-iPad tablet ever. Is that a fair assessment?
100%. It is the most exciting non-iPad tablet I've ever used. And like it's pretty thin. I think it's just, what is it, a millimeter thicker than an iPad. And the bezels are kind of big around the screen, but it's, you know, Matthias is like, oh, you want big bezels so you can hold it in landscape. And I guess that's true. But like it's fast, and it feels right in a way that honeycomb and even ice cream sandwich tablets never ever did. And that's partly because the Android tablets that I had experience with before were like the original 7-inch Galaxy Tab, which was on, I think it was on 2.3, and then 10-inch tablets, which just like I hated that you had this crap in the four corners of the screen. You had Google search up here, you had multitasking and something else down here, you had notifications over here, you had apps up in the other corner, and you were just like, yeah, all the time.
Yeah.
And so with the Nexus 7, they're like, you know what? And this is actually one of the interesting things that I tried to come across in the review of Jelly Bean, is like everything from Honeycomb except for like that initial idea of having a pop-up multitasking thumbnail list is gone. Like there's very little Tron left. That bar on the bottom, the four corners of Honeycomb, that's gone. The font is improved. It's like it's like a blown up phone, but it's a blown up version of Jelly Bean, which is great, instead of a shrunk down version of Honeycomb, which I think it's, even if you liked it, you got to admit it had baggage, and I think it was totally the right call to jettison it.
But will this UI work at 10 inches?
That is an excellent question. I think it'll be pretty weird at 10 inches.
Yeah, that's my concern. I mean, 10 inches is a very, very important form factor for tablets, obviously, and somebody is going to have to make a 10-inch 4.1 tablet, whether it be Google through a partner and they brand it as a Nexus, or if it's somebody else. But somebody's going to do it, and that's still a very open question what that UI is going to look like.
Can I just rewind us back to Matthias's comments for just a quick moment about you want a thick bezel in order to hold it in landscape? That is basically the tech equivalent of a car salesman telling you, I know this car is slow, but that's safe. Okay? You want it to be slow because then you won't kill yourself when you're driving. Just give me a tiny little bezel, and then I can stick things on the outside of it if I really need to hold on to it.
I don't know if I agree. That this is a problem. This has always been a problem for me with the iPad since day one. Like if I'm reading it in bed and I'm holding it above my face, you know, and you always hear stories about people dropping their iPads on their faces and breaking their faces. Really tragic, and I don't mean to make light of that situation, although it is kind of funny.
Yeah. So many crushed noses.
Right. There is definitely something to be said for having a thicker bezel, and I agree with you, Vlad. I think that Matthias was putting a positive spin on. You know, Asus started this project to make like a low end. I don't want to call it a crap tablet, but like a low end tablet that was under $250. This is the Sean Hollister wrote an excellent piece about this. You should go read it. Started life as the Memo, and uses a low cost Tegra 3 and all that jazz. So I think that ultimately the bezel is there because it's a low cost device. But that being said, I think that there is a very legitimate positive spin to be put on that big bezel.
Well, it's not. It's bigger on the top and the bottom than it is on the sides in portrait, and so having it when you put it into landscape be a little bit bigger there means you can like hold it with your thumb and you get more leverage on the stupid thing. Actually, so no, the home screen on Jelly Bean does not go into landscape.
That's like, not going to work at 10 inches. It's just not.
No. There's no way that would ever work at 10 inches.
Maybe it would for a 4x3 tablet because you think of an iPad, it's mostly used in portrait. But if they're putting out 16:9 10-inch tablets like they usually do with Android, then they can't avoid the landscape question. They just can't.
But let's also not rush conclusions here as well, because the Android 4.1 that we have so far is a preview build, right? Well, the Android 4.1 that was announced at the show was Android 4.1 preview.
Yeah, but it's coming out. It's going gold. It's shipping this month, so it's not like
it's going open source in the next 2-3 weeks.
Right, but I also think that being able to flip the UI into landscape mode is such a minor thing. Google could just do Android 4.1.1 when the first 4.1 10-inch tablets come out. I wouldn't worry about it too.
No, I agree, but there are open UI questions about how that will work and look.
Yeah. No, that's absolutely true.
Chad is saying that there will definitely be a different 10-inch UI is just the same UI. No, there's a different UI. Uses the old UI, uses the original ice cream sandwich honeycomb UI. So that might be what the whole story is here.
Okay, and is there some specific Konami code combination that a user needs to punch in to get the special tablet UI? What's going on there?
I think it's just the bigger tablets will use it. I think that like Google just didn't want to talk about it at all with this thing because they're positioning against Kindle Fire and they want to keep it really simple.
Right.
So they didn't broadcast all that differences.
Speaking of the Fire, that's a very good question. Like, what is going to happen? I have so many questions about Amazon right now. Amazon is a source of continued fascination for me because I know I talk about the mythical Amazon phone on every podcast. But what is Amazon's next move? Are they going to fork 4.0 or 4.1 again? Or are they permanently forked off of, what did they pull, 3.0 or 2? I don't know what the Fire is running. It's 2.3 or 3.0 or 3.1 or what?
2.3.
2.3. So are they
2.2? No,
yeah, 2.3. Definitely.
So are they permanently forked, or are they going to take another cut? Who
knows?
And what is the next Fire going to look like? Are they going to do a 7 and a 10? Is it going to be? Well, there are rumors going around that it's going to be a much higher end looking and feeling device than the current Fire, which I would believe because the Nexus 7 looks and feels nicer than the existing Fire, which is basically just a repurposed playbook without a camera. But yeah, lots of questions for Amazon right now, how they respond to this. But in the meantime, what they immediately need to do, in fact, I'm blown away they haven't done this already, is drop the existing Fire to 179. Why they haven't done that, I don't know. Because there's no way that they would not be able to break even, if not still turn a profit at this point in the Fire's life cycle if they dropped it to 179. There's no way.
And I would not recommend a Fire to anybody except for people who are desperate for Amazon Video. Or I guess buying stuff on Amazon because the Amazon app doesn't work on the Nexus 7. Isn't that funny?
What was that?
The Amazon Shopping app, it's not compatible. When I try and load it up in Google Play, it says it doesn't work on my device.
Oh, well, they're gonna have to fix that. Amazon. See, here's the thing about both Google and Amazon is that they both, and they've exhibited this in the past few weeks. They both seem to be pretty genuine about the fact that they just want to extend their ecosystems as far and wide as possible, whether it's their own hardware or somebody else's hardware. Google is being very good about continuing to support iOS. That was one of the announcements that came out of I/O, is that now Google Drive is on iOS and all this other stuff. And of course, Amazon is very good about pushing Kindle far and wide as well, and Amazon Music and Cloud Player. So, or excuse me, Amazon Cloud Storage and Cloud Player. So hopefully they all continue to do that, regardless of what device you're using.
On that point, Chris, I do feel like there's only one way that we can wrap up our discussion of Android 4.1, at least for the moment, and that is by having an epic whinge about the complete silence from every Android OEM, without exception, about when current devices are being upgraded to 4.1. There has been zero.
Before we get into that, I want to point out
notifications.
Notifications are awesome. In you can't act on everything. I wish you could archive email, but being able to drag down your email and see your 5 most recent messages is totally amazing. And I don't know why they didn't do it sooner. It's prettier. They improved the font. The new notifications is really great. And I would show them to you, but it's all
in Android 4.1, the one that nobody has on their phone right now.
One thing that Josh said. One thing that Josh pointed out in his Nexus 7 review that concerned me a bit is the fact that you can't, Dieter, correct me if I'm wrong, you can't collapse or expand all notifications with a single toggle, right?
Right.
Yeah.
And it sort of auto expands like pictures and whatnot. Okay, so I mean, Vlad's right. We need to have a whinge. Okay? Explain whinge to me. Is it like wine or is it a different word?
Yeah, it's exactly like wine. I am actually not really sure why there are two words for that. I'm actually using it kind of blindly. Thank you for calling me out for using the word blindly, Dieter.
I don't know what you guys are talking about.
There's no shame in that at all.
Oh, what the heck are you guys talking about?
Well, I'm going to talk about mobile again. Well, there's one other thing, which is Google's I/O 2012 Day 2 keynote was essentially the iOS portion of I/O, because it was bonkers and loaded with things for iPhone and iPad. Here's how our software works on the iPad. Here's how it works on the iPhone. It was like, hey, Apple, we want to be friends. And one of the things that came out of that was that Chrome for iOS, iPhone, and iPad was available on the day. Now, the first thing to say about that, and everybody has noted it, is it's not the proper Chrome browser. It's kind of Chrome-ish, because Apple doesn't allow you to install your full browser and have the full JavaScript engine, all of those things. But it does sync with your Chrome bookmarks, which to me is one of the major attractions of Chrome, is having the bookmark synced across every device that I've got. Yeah. And the annoying thing is you need Android 4.1, I believe. Or 4, yeah, I think so.
4.0. 4.0.
4.0.
Well,
yeah.
Right. Okay, well, in any case, most devices don't have access to the full Chrome browser, which left beta during I/O. Most Android devices don't have access to the full Chrome browser, and Apple has, like, over 90% of iOS devices have access to some version of that browser.
It's really weird.
You know what Google doesn't have access to, though, is decent whatever the heck the stupid things are called that point a camera at a screen. The pictures from the live blog, I mean, I apologize, they were terrible, of Chrome running on the iPad and iPhone, but that was because they pumped in red fog and red lights on the devices, so you literally, sitting there in the room, you couldn't see what they were doing. It was like they were in hell. And I don't know if that was intentional or what.
Pumping in red fog is a surefire way to make any presentation go a little smoother. Vlad, I want to go back to something you said earlier, which is that Google is like, oh, Apple, we want to be friends. That's not it at all. They want to be friends with Apple users, not with Apple. There's a big difference.
But yeah, no, absolutely. But yeah, I mean, look, I know that Google's play is very specifically to get its own wares onto, again, like you were saying, Chris, every single platform possible. And
Yeah.
iOS is the one platform you can't ignore. Like, it doesn't
Right.
matter how much you hate Apple, how much you want to compete with Apple, you have to be on that platform. Yeah, but then, at the same time, Google's best way to achieve that is to be amenable to Apple's demands and to be friendly to Apple. So
I mean,
it's
they
in
could have
that
taken their
respect
ball
that
and
I'm
gone
saying
home.
let's be friends. Like, I don't really think Google has as its end goal some sort of will unite with Apple and knock out the competition or whatever. Like, that's obviously not the case. It's just, if you want to be on Apple's platform, you have to play nice with Apple. That's been known. That's the thing that's been the truth for years now. Decades,
Right.
maybe.
I'll bet you that Google has an amazing native Chromium build for iOS that they can't submit to the App Store. I'll bet you they have it kicking around at the Googleplex. This amazing, like, totally native Chromium build. I guarantee it. They just
Do you think it would be like Flash? Like, Google will constantly moan and just kind of be passive aggressive about it and just talk, we would love to give you guys a native Chrome experience, but it's just up to Apple. Why doesn't Apple open up?
Well,
Blah, blah, blah.
Eric Schmidt certainly would. I don't know about Sergey Brin, who turns out to be like this crazy superhero, like chill superhero guy who wears muscle shirts and commands people to jump out of planes.
I'm pretty sure Sergey Brin, now that he's a triple billionaire and whatever, now his only goal in life is to be the utmost badass for the rest of his days.
Yeah, and hey, more power.
What's his name? Ellison bought an island, right?
Yeah. Ellison bought an island. But all things considered, if I had to choose between buying an island and dropping a bunch of dudes wearing heads-up glasses that I essentially funded onto Moscone Center in San Francisco, I think I would take the latter personally.
Yeah.
No, Chris, no, absolutely not. The island is the way to go. What you want, here's a recipe. You want to buy the island, make sure you can grow watermelons on it, and then set up a nice watermelon farm on it. Okay. And then just, spend the rest of your days on a rocking chair on the porch, looking at the sea, the ocean, just lapping the waves against the beach, eating watermelon.
So now we know how Vlad is going to spend the rest of his life.
Yeah. That actually sounds pretty amazing.
You can get a pretty layer. You can get a nice satellite internet connection as well. I'm not saying, be a hermit. I'm just saying, guys jumping out of an airplane is a few minutes worth of excitement, maybe hours, if you can stretch it out. But an island, dude, you could do anything on an island.
How much watermelon could you reasonably eat, though? I mean, like, what are you going to do with all these watermelons?
Can you?
Are you going to sell them? You pace yourself.
And I don't know. I don't like this plan. I see what Larry Ellison is really going to do is he's going to turn that island into like a private, most dangerous game, / Hunger Game / that formula has been done 15 times now throughout history.
Dude, I'm telling you, Thunderball.
Yeah, Battle Royale.
Thunderball, guys. He's building an underwater lair, and we're going to have to send James Bond in to take him out. That's it.
Guys, one thing I want to point out, though, is we love to talk about, as in all of society, the whole world, love to talk about the power of states and the dangers of authoritarian regimes and all of that stuff. But then we're kind of forgetting how these ultra-rich companies, and let's not forget, Google has cash reserves that are better than most European countries. Okay, I'm just making it up, but probably, because most European countries are in debt. Apple has more money than probably anybody in the world. The guys who are on top of these companies have power that is probably comparable to that of many states. And, just look at the examples we're giving. Like, one CEO or former CEO, co-CEO, Sergey Brin, is sending guys out of planes, jumping and recording video. Another guy is buying an island. Oracle now has territories.
True. It's absolutely true. And it's not a very big leap of logic to suggest that Ellison's going to use Oracle's vast technology to take over a satellite like GoldenEye, and you know,
what do you mean take over? He'll launch one. He'll launch a freaking array of satellites.
He could.
See, I think Ellison is more of a moonraker kind of guy. I think that's more his style.
So like a space base of some sort.
Yeah.
I like it.
For sure.
Yeah,
the secret space that nobody knew about somehow.
Dark side of the moon.
You might already have it. Who knows? Anyway,
okay,
we should
need
talk
to get back.
Nexus Q.
We need to complain about Nexus Q, and then we need to talk about the fact that Android 4.1 was announced the same week that Android 4.0 just barely managed to crack 10%. I think it's 10.9 all told. And I'm sure a huge chunk of that, you know, when it went from like 7 to just over 10 was from sales of the Galaxy S3. And, you know, last year at Google I/O, there was this alliance of all these partners, and they promised that devices would get updates within 18 months, assuming the hardware could support it, and they're going to find a way to make things happen more quickly. And, I mean, what happened there? Nobody knows. So now the new initiative is the Platform Development Kit. And the idea is a few months, 2 to 3 months before they actually launch the next version of Android, they're going to give hardware partners access to it so that they can port their hardware or port Android onto their hardware. Which, okay, maybe that'll work out better than what we've got now, but it takes more than a couple of months for these companies to ship the latest version of Android on existing devices. It always does. And then on top of that, you know, we reached out to all the major Android OEMs, and the most forthcoming statement we got out of anybody was from Samsung, who was already high on their horse because they're, you know, releasing Android 4.1 devices. They also said that they will soon announce which additional devices are eligible. HTC said watch the space, and everybody else said, meh, we're looking. We don't know. Like, yeah, that's terrible. Like that is Google. Like, if you thought that Google could, like, I don't know, control the Android ecosystem, or, you know, corral these manufacturers into, you know, bending to their will and cooperating with them instead of just taking Android, you know, when Google gives it away for free and, you know, using it for their own means, then, like, that illusion is gone. Like, the Android ecosystem is all of these manufacturers going after their own thing, and Google going after its own thing. And the thing that ties them together is that, you know, Google happens to give away Android that these guys happen to put on their phones eventually, but, you know, in totally different ecosystems. Like, do you think that Samsung is going to put Google Now on the Galaxy S3 and jettison S Voice?
That's a very good question. I hadn't thought about that. I don't have a prepared answer. I think
S-Voice is garbage.
50-50.
Right.
S-Voice is really terrible, but that I mean, come on, Vlad. When has that stopped Samsung from doing anything?
The only thing I don't want to see is Samsung do S Now, because then it's going to be Samsung Snow.
Yeah, that would be bad.
Oh no, that'd be perfect, because it'd be Samsung Snow, and then instead of asking, you know, Google to tell you something or Siri to tell you something, you'd ask Informer to tell you something.
You lost me.
I know there's a reference here. I'm just not getting it.
Yeah.
Now, what if I said a licky boom boom down? Would that help?
No,
nope.
I have absolutely no idea what you're talking about.
Okay, move on. Just let it go.
Wait. Yeah, some listeners.
The chat room's totally got it, man. Brian, he's in the room. He's got it. The Canadian rapper, Informer. Come on, 90s hip hop, man.
You lost
I'm not going
me.
to sing it for you.
I was too busy listening to Van Halen in the 90s. I don't know any Canadian rappers from the 90s.
Vlad, I'm sorry that I took us down that path. Please.
Yeah, I am perplexed. There were thoughts in my mind, and now there's nothing.
So look, I want to say one thing, and, you know, I'm not going to say it at the very end of the show, because I know we always end the show on a depressing note, and I want to get the depression out now, which is that I feel like the tenuous alliance that is holding Android together. I mean, Charlie Kindle has written extensively about this, and when he first started, I thought that he was kind of crazy, and now I realize that he's dead on, which is that Google lost
You mean
control
he's crazy
of
like
Android.
a fox?
Exactly. Google lost control of Android a long time ago, and they can say and do whatever they want, and that's great. 4.1 is a beautiful dream, and Google can make as many devices as they want to make running 4.1. But I think that OEMs are probably feeling empowered by the success that Amazon has had, and they are probably feeling like they can offer enough value add on top of any version of Android if they're choosing to completely ignore or mostly ignore new versions of the platform offered by Google and instead fork off and do whatever they want to do with a previous version and just add crapware on top of it. And that's an extremely depressing vision, but I think it's probably an accurate one.
Yeah.
Okay. I am depressed.
Okay.
Sorry,
I know
guys.
how I can make us happy again. Let's talk about the Nexus Q.
Yes, the shot put. Let's do it.
Oh my God, it is terrible. Is that the word I'm looking for? It's interesting, and you don't think of it as an Apple TV competitor. Think of it as like a Sonos competitor because it's got an amp, and they're sort of looking at high-end audio with it. And the way it works, if you're not familiar, is it looks like you're streaming music from your phone, but you're not. You are using the music app on your phone that you would normally play music from to tell the Nexus Q to stream the music directly from Google Play over Wi-Fi over the internet.
Well, let's
and then
clarify
there's a
one
party
other thing.
mode.
Let's clarify the first thing, that the Nexus Q is not a speaker.
Right.
Right?
It has an amp, but it's not a speaker.
Right, so it can't put out sound? It needs to plug into something else?
Right. There's banana plugs for 2 speakers, or you can plug, optical audio out or HDMI out to get the sound out of it.
I can tell you that is the most befuddling thing about this device, which is befuddling in its entirety, in its entire spherical existence. But it's like everybody who looks at it and hears that it's about sound and music and streaming and all of that stuff and sees its shape, because it's so spherical, it looks like it should be a speaker. So everybody would expect at least some sound to come out of it. And particularly with the price, which, we'll come around to. But it's just kind of nuts to me that, I don't know. I mean, just carry on, because I have more questions than answers with this.
They were very close to making a Sony Rolly when you think about it.
Yeah.
I mean,
it reminds you of that.
Yeah, because it has the colored ring that flashes in sync with the music, right? All they needed to do is put a little motor on it to make it roll around, and add a speaker, and they would have had the next generation Rolly.
The thing weighs like 2 pounds. Like that would it would shatter floors if it were to. Okay.
It's like classic American muscle cars, right? Like it's made in the USA. it's gotta exude that American like heaviness, right? So they have to make it a 2-pound device. Absolutely. Nice. I'm totally on board.
I don't think Google intends to have this be a commercial success. I don't think they ever did. It's an interesting project. There's going to be some people that really get into it. It's got the micro USB port, so you can hack on it. There's already games running on it, and so people will have some fun with it. And they're just sort of seeing what it's like to be in this market in a small way. And maybe they'll, with the next version, they'll do something more ambitious and more serious for the consumer market. I think for now, it's just in a weird space. Like, what's its relationship to Google TV? Well, it's a totally different thing. What is it for? I think it's for people to just be like, oh, I've got this cool thing, and it's kind of nerdy and fun. Like, that's what it's for.
I think
it's not very good at it.
I think that really what it was it was a way for Google to experiment with the concept of making a device in the U.S. without having it be something that was without having it be something that was really critical to Google's strategy, because the Q isn't critical to any part of Google's strategy, right? It's just this thing that, and if it, like you're saying, Dieter, if it succeeds, great. If it doesn't, that's fine too. It's not a phone. It's not a tablet. It's not something that's really core to the success of Android going forward. And I think that Google probably would be the first to admit that they have kinks to work out in their U.S. manufacturing strategy if they're going to actually make that work.
Well, here's another question. Does the Q have any built-in storage?
It's got 8 or... Brian, how much storage does the Q have? How much storage does the Q have?
16.
16 gigs built in, but you can't like transfer stuff to it. It's just there for caching video.
Yeah. I mean, that was my impression, that you can't stick your music on it, which is just annoying because Google learned this lesson to some degree with Chrome OS in making Google Docs this past week available offline and offline editing, and making the whole experience of using its devices offline at least tolerable, right? Because most Google services are so online centric. You have to be online. You have to have a web connection in order to make full use of them. And now it's kind of taking a step back with the Q and saying, well, if you want to play music with this thing, you need to have a web connection always, constantly. Even if you are, I mean, look, a great example is I might want to, I wouldn't want to take the Q because, as Dieter just said, it's heavy, but I might want to take a device like this when I'm traveling, right? And just have my music on it for whatever reason.
I
don't know why.
Why would you carry?
I don't know
why would you
would
carry a 2-pound sphere with you when you travel?
Because
under any circumstances.
I might...
A 2-pound sphere with a glowing light and a rotating top that looks a lot like a bomb. It looks a lot like a bomb. Like like if you just put a fuse on the back of it, out of one of the little ports on the back, that's some Wile E. Coyote action right there.
Okay. I won't carry on with that hypothetical because it really is just way too. It's out there, but there's a more serious point to make here, which is at last year's I/O, Google made a big point about Android at home. At this year's I/O, there was no Android at home. They were just, I mean, the Q is kind of linking into that, but there is none of that. I mean, there was a whole SDK for Android at home, which it seems to be like 25 people used and abandoned within a month. It's been a year, no development, nothing really happening. And if I can offer kind of a far-reaching analogy, I'm getting the feeling with Google's Android at home and home automation and home flirtations anyway with home devices, that Google has the idea that there's a market there that maybe can be developed and grown and exploited, but isn't doing it properly. And is kind of doing, to use another Apple term, hobby devices, particularly with the Q. Like Chris says, it's not really a serious device, a serious competitor to anything, really. And
the thing about the Q is like they're being obstinate about it. Like it's basically got the guts, I believe, of a Galaxy Nexus inside in terms of its processor, and we just mentioned the RAM and everything. So like it's running Android 4.0. They're just like deliberately like nerfing it basically so that it'll only work with Google Play to see if they can, make this ecosystem play with Google Play, and then also, let people hack on it just to sort of, I don't know, appease people that like to hack on strange Android spheres. But like they could have, I feel like, done more. Like this wasn't an issue if they ran out of time to give it a UI, because it doesn't have a UI. It's only got the app on your phone. It's that they're deliberately choosing not to. They're deliberately saying, we're going to make this thing that's weird. We want to make a weird little thing, and let's see what that does.
Right, but the analogy that comes to mind with me is Microsoft and its tablet strategy around the turn of the century, right? Because since 2000, 2001, Bill Gates has been saying, tablets are going to be really, really awesome. They're going to be great. They're going to do a whole heap of things for you. And Microsoft has been doing tablets. And we can throw Intel into that as well with the MIDs. Like, ultimately, tablets are Intel's vision of the mobile internet device. They're just done better and well. So what I'm kind of getting, the feeling that I'm getting is that guys like Google are going to screw around and are going to be like, well, we'll try this other experimental device. And while they're doing that, they are actually providing data points and some sort of reference points for guys. Again, I'm going back to Apple. I don't know why I sound like an Apple fanboy this week, but whatever. For guys who are more serious and focused about really exploiting the space and really having a mass market device. And then ultimately, somebody's going to come up with something that really solves too many problems for people and then becomes indispensable. And that somebody isn't going to be Google because it's so scattershot in its approach. I mean, that's the feeling that I'm getting right now.
I agree.
One of Google's strengths, and this has been a strength of theirs for many, many years, is that they have the money and the brain trust to, basically put on a blindfold and fire a bunch of shots into the air and hope that something hits. That goes back to their corporate culture of 80-20 and it's very fundamental to their philosophy as a company that they try all these crazy things and hopefully something works. And I think that the Q fits right into that. And that fits in with what you were saying, Vlad, about it being a hobby for them, just like the Apple TV was for Apple. And I think that the Apple TV is not a hobby anymore. I think that it's turned into a viable platform for them and will continue to evolve as such. The Q, I don't know. Maybe it won't. Maybe there will be no Q2. But maybe something will come of it. Maybe they'll figure it out for next year's I/O. I don't know. But I don't think that Google is sweating over this being a success or a failure. I think that the worst case scenario for them is that they don't sell any of these, and for the price, they probably won't sell many. But they've figured out a way. They've worked through a lot of the logistics of making a device like this in the U.S. And they've come away with that knowledge. That we can't overlook the fact that this is a Google device. This is not another company making this device on Google's behalf and then Google slaps their name on it. Google made this device. With the Q, they are a hardware manufacturer.
Right. But what I'm saying is that they're not, like D2 is saying, they could do more. They could go one step beyond just, we'll build this and it would be crazy and nuts and whatever. They could build something that actually, gives them a foothold in the market. Because as far as I'm concerned, network speakers and speakers that you can just, seamlessly, and that's the key thing, seamlessly get your music off your phone and playing onto them, whether it be via AirPlay, whether it be via something like Sonos and Wi-Fi and whatever else. There can be just a massive market if somebody nails the price and nails the execution. It's there. It's just waiting for somebody to do it right. Sonos is too expensive. That market basically just needs its own Kindle Fire, as far as I'm concerned. AirPlay is too expensive as well. And the Q could have been that device. Like, there was nothing standing in its way.
I don't think it's that AirPlay is too expensive. It's because there's a huge AirPlay ecosystem now. The problem is that AirPlay is proprietary to iOS and to Apple, and Android does not have a viable equivalent to AirPlay right now. And it's so frustrating to me whenever I go to to somebody's house and they have an AirPlay device, and I just I want to say, hey, listen to this track or whatever, and I can't. Android desperately needs something that is that simple. It's weird to think, because we've had HTTP for so many years now. It's weird to think that little leap from HTTP to seamless Wi-Fi audio and video would be such a big deal, but it really is. AirPlay has revolutionized that entire workflow of playing media, and I would love to see somebody do something that simple and easy on Android. And Q certainly isn't the answer to that, because people aren't going to own Qs.
I just want to point out that if Google does try and make a go of this at actually making another version of the Q, there's going to be rumors about it, and we're going to have to write about having received a Q tip.
I can't believe you just said that. It's really, really upsetting to me.
I think we got that reference to old school rap. We got, and it's actually a really good one.
I'm slappy, guys. I'm sorry.
First is Canadian rappers, now it's Q-tips. I just don't know. See, I warned people in the podcast post that Dieter may not be lucid, and I think that
I went home to take a nap, and literally 5 minutes after I laid down, there's banging at my front door, and a bunch of workers showed up to install the baseboards after my apartment flooded. Was it 2 weeks ago? I don't even remember. It may have been a year ago. It doesn't, whatever. And so like I couldn't sleep. I had time to take a nap and I wasn't unable to do it because they were selling baseboards. And they knew that I was in a hurry to get them out of there. So they were rushing. And they basically spent the whole time telling each other to do unmentionable things to their mothers, which was pretty awesome. I got to brush up on my Spanish. Yeah.
You should have offered them a Q for their hard work.
They would have thrown it at me. And that's a dangerous thing to get chucked at you. I mean,
yeah,
honestly.
I imagine so. I'm so tired of talking about the Q. Can we please talk about something else?
Yeah, what I was going to say is we can't have a Google exclusive podcast. Can we talk about anybody else?
We can talk about RIM.
Talk about RIM.
Anybody before RIM? I'm saving RIM for our depressing closer.
Oh, right. Fair enough. Well, T-Mobile CEO resigned. Oh, that's depressing too.
Well, it's not entirely depressing. It is happy news for him that he's going to work for Vodafone, which is in Germany, which is a carrier with much brighter prospects than T-Mobile USA right now. So at least for him, it's a happy event.
Right.
So yeah, they still have an interim CEO, T-Mobile USA. They haven't announced a permanent CEO yet.
Okay, no, we got to talk about BlackBerry. So BlackBerry 10 devices delayed to 2013. RIM cutting 5,000 jobs, and they took a $518 million loss. Their sales last quarter have plummeted. They're not selling phones anymore. Well, I mean, they're still selling phones, but radically fewer, which is a bad sign that they're, what they had been hanging on to, which was international, is probably starting to get really, really soft on them. So that's all the terrible news. The good news is the grand tradition of RIM executives saying boneheaded things in public continues with Torsten Heinz.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, so there are two good things that Torsten Heinz has said, which are very encouraging. First of all, he said that he's not satisfied with the results. Yep. So that's good news, right? If he had said, "Well, I'm delighted with this horrible quarter," then he probably wouldn't be the right CEO for the company. But then two, he has come out today with an opinion piece in the Globe and Mail, the Canadian newspaper, saying that RIM is not, in fact, in a death spiral. So yeah,
he said that in a radio interview. Like the company is not ignoring the world out there, nor is it in a death spiral. Like, man, don't let people put the word death spiral in quotes when in an article about you. I don't care if you're saying no. Like, you do not bring that up. That's just not smart. You say we're not failing. We're not going down. We're not something. But
I agree with him. I don't think it's a spiral at all. I mean, it's a straight line, right? It's going this way, or I think that's the way.
The problem for RIM is that maybe a year or two ago there were potential paths and options that they could have maybe pursued to turn the company around, but at this point there is no right answer, right? So people will say, I can't believe Torsten Heinz is delaying BlackBerry 10 to Q1 2013. Well, guess what? If they had shipped a half-baked product this year, that would have been their death knell. But are they going to survive long enough to ship in Q1? I don't know. Maybe not. So there is no longer a right answer.
I'm going to retweet somebody live on the show and be completely irresponsible in not crediting that person. I saw this, in the immediate wake of RIM's announcement of his quarterly results, and it was the best reaction. So whoever it was, very clever guy. Credit to them. That person said that RIM has delayed the first BlackBerry 10 devices until after it stops doing business, until after it shuts down and goes bust, which was just the perfect way to summarize it. Like, it's so difficult for me to express and at the same time comprehend just the sheer stupidity of leaving the smartphone market. Leaving the smartphone market. As far as I'm concerned, RIM doesn't have anything that is competitive with legitimate smartphones anymore, and it's not going to until at least the first quarter of 2013. It was late with Q3 2012. That was late. That was the previous roadmap. And nothing was happening. Now they've moved it a whole 6 months back. I don't care how amazing the software is or is going to be. Even if it actually beats every single piece of software that's leading the market today. So even if it beats iOS 6, even if it beats Android 5.0 is probably going to be out by then. That doesn't matter. It doesn't have an app ecosystem because people are going to have to start building apps all over again. And even if it's ahead of everything else, summer is going to come again. There's going to be Google I/O 2013. There's going to be iOS 7. You just can't compete. You're done.
And
I mean,
Heinz,
if I'm Torsten right now, I would say exactly what he's saying. There's nothing wrong with the company, and just spend every single second trying to sell the freaking company to somebody.
And I think that's what's happening.
Chris, I know what you were about to say, and it's not true. It's very clear that hindsight is not 2020 here.
That is okay, Dieter. That is strike 3. You may now leave the show. Walk away. Have Brian sit in your place. Go lay your head down. You've earned it. No. They are. I think that what's happening behind the scenes, we've known for a few weeks now, and we've written a story about it, and he mentioned it again on this earnings call. They have retained 2 banks to quote unquote investigate their options, and those banks are, in my opinion, obviously going to recommend that RIM liquidate some or all of its assets, and that recommendation is probably going to come long before BlackBerry 10 ships. So the question is, does BlackBerry in the long term does RIM become an IP holding company? Does it become this generation's Palm Source? I don't know, but yeah, it's looking very grim. And the thing is, Heinz has said in the past 2 quarterly earnings calls, including this most recent one, that they want to concentrate on the enterprise and BYOD markets. The problem with that, which he fails to acknowledge, is that BYOD implies that anyone wants to bring your device. Nobody is going out to their carrier right now and saying, give me your latest, hottest BlackBerry, and then bringing it into their office and going to their IT department and saying, this is the phone that I want to use for my corporate email. Nobody is doing that. So BYOD makes no sense for them. It makes sense for Apple, makes sense for Google, doesn't make sense for RIM. That leaves them only with enterprise, and that market is being eaten quarter by quarter by quarter by Apple and by Google OEMs.
And just another thing that really, really needs mentioning here. RIM has been failing to execute for so long, for so many years. Forget what Torsten and Mike Lazaridis before him have said. Torsten, everything is fine. Mike, everything is unfair. Just forget what they've said. Remember, the BlackBerry 7 wasn't supposed to be BlackBerry 7. It was originally supposed to be BlackBerry 6.5, but it took so freaking long to make. And RIM was so convinced it's such a massive upgrade, it just decided it would jump it a whole 1 version up. Remember that?
Yeah.
Or am I crazy?
No, I remember.
The case, right? It was supposed to be BlackBerry 6.5. It went to BlackBerry 7. Yeah. I mean, we're looking at freaking, BlackBerry 7 was behind the times as soon as it came out. We're looking at version inflation, from BlackBerry 6.5.
It was actually 6.1, not 6.5.
I've mentioned this before. I've mentioned this before. If you look at everything from BlackBerry OS 4.7 to 7.1, you can barely notice the difference. I mean, that is so. Vlad, I think the terminology used, version inflation, is an excellent description of what's happening here.
Well, the browser is, usable, slightly more usable.
Yes.
Torch browser.
Very good point.
I will say this. I would for me, and I would selfishly like to see another company try and do something new with like user interface design on a smartphone, because I think that's interesting. And I think that BlackBerry 10 is an interesting mix of a whole lot of concepts. And I would love to see if RIM could actually pull it off in a usable device that feels compelling. Whether or not it succeeds, just because I'm, greedy, I would like to play around with that. And two, like, if I were also being selfish, like the scenario I would be, that seems most likely to me and that I would be really happy with is if a year from now we're talking about installing BlackBerry Messenger on Android and iOS and Windows Phone devices, and this mess and iMessages is, obviated, nobody uses it anymore, and we have a full, secure, instant cross-platform messaging solution that is as robust and compelling as BlackBerry Messenger used to be for BlackBerry users. Like
you need a nap. You need a nap so badly, Dieter. I can't even tell you. That is the most absurd vision I've heard in this entire show. BBM I've never understood BBM. Okay, I don't understand the novelty in giving a hexadecimal code to a friend of yours so that he can add you to your account. In what version 7? When did this happen?
I can't remember what version of BlackBerry Messenger they moved on to that. The hexadecimals, I think, are still technically there under the hood in some cases. It's a big mess, but we'll have to have Kevin Mitchell come on and explain it all to us. But what I'm saying is, like, SMS is expensive and stupid, and not everybody's using Google Talk. WhatsApp, GroupMe, iMessage, blah, blah, blah. Just give me a cross-platform messaging solution that I don't have to pay 25 cents a pop to the carrier.
Right.
Well, I'm tired of waiting for that.
Carriers are very, very cognizant of the fact that business model is going away. And I'm sure that they're going to be fighting very hard over the course of the next 18 months to 2 years to try and keep that source of revenue. Because at this point, AT&T and Verizon have forced virtually all of their smartphone customers onto these $20 unlimited messaging plans, which is just absurd to think about. The fact that you are paying $20 a month for something that costs the carriers as close to $0.00 per message as you can possibly imagine. I'd love to see like an independent audit break down exactly how much one SMS costs AT&T, but it must be in the thousands or tens of thousands of a cent. Tens of thousands, I'm sure, if not even less. Because I mean, keep in mind, SMS's origin is literally they fit. The reason it's 160 characters is because they fit it into some sort of header message in the GSM scheme. So it's like it began life as a shoehorned protocol that wouldn't cost anybody anything to begin with, and now we're 20 years on, and we're getting charged $20 a month for these things. It's completely asimine. So I agree with you that
it's progress.
I totally agree that something needs to replace that, and it's unfortunate that what's ending up happening is we're developing these incompatible fiefdom. Most notably iMessage, which is iOS only. So if we get to the point where there's no viable SMS replacement, that will make me a very sad individual indeed.
We're at that point right now.
I still use SMS daily.
Well, yeah, I know, but I mean, there's no viable replacement, is what I'm saying, and that's completely frustrating to me.
Yeah, no, I agree. iMessage could be that replacement if it were cross-platform.
I want to bring us back to RIM actually, just for a quick second. What I was actually thinking, I mean, I'm with Dieter on this. I feel like RIM could figure out a licensing agreement and just spread BBM out, and figure out, again, licensing agreements with other companies for its enterprise services and all of those things. That was Jim Balsilie's whole idea that he wanted to promote and push months and months ago, tail end of last year, and it's the thing that made, well, it's because he was turned down in that push that he decided to step down as co-CEO. But, that ship, that whatever, has sailed by now. But what I also have been thinking about QNX, which is the underpinning of BlackBerry 10, is whoever's fault it is, it's taking RIM an inordinately long time to code anything with it. or on top of it, or however you want to put it. I mean, the playbook came out with the QNX-based OS, and it didn't have an email client. It didn't have really, really, really basic functionality. I don't think it had a calendar. I think that was one of the omissions, right? It was missing a calendar. Is that basically limited and hamstrung? So, and now again, we're taking 6 months. I can tell you with an absolute guarantee, the thing that's taking 6 months is not hardware, right? RIM in 6 months' time, like if you tell RIM from today, design me a brand new smartphone, it needs to be super high end, you have 6 months, it will be a massive push, but RIM has the resources, the capabilities, the designers to make that happen. So delaying things, well, I still think so. Okay. They'll rush it, but they can do it. Just let me be, bullish on RIM for a second, right? For a little bit, we can be bullish on RIM. But then now we're talking, RIM has given itself some 10 months to finish off just the software. Like the software is the thing holding this thing back. And that's a problem. Like if you can't code on that software fast enough to compete with anybody else, even if you get the best case scenario and QNX comes out, blows us all away in the first quarter of 2013, what does that mean for the future after that? If you're still coding and evolving your OS slower than everybody else.
Yeah. There is no.
Okay. I struck the perfect tone. We can just cut it. Done. We can finish the
now that we're all depressed again.
There's no road.
Podcast.
There's no road to success for RIM apart from breaking up or selling the company. I'm absolutely convinced of it, and I think that Torsten Heinz is convinced of that too, and I think that's why these two banks are in there. And he knows damn well that he can't say anything about that until that process is complete. So
who can buy RIM
until then,
without any antitrust issues?
I think anybody, because RIM doesn't add any value to anyone. But I just realized something. I just had a moment of brilliance that I wanted to share with you. I think that Heinz, actually, I'm sure this has probably already been said in somebody's editorial, but I'm going to steal it and use it as my own. I actually don't think that Heinz has any intention of shipping BlackBerry 10 ever. I think the problem is that with the original ship date, it bumped up. It bumped up against a potential decision from the banks or a target sale date, and he didn't want to get those two dates mixed up. So he pushed BlackBerry 10 out comfortably far enough so that it wouldn't be an issue for the banks coming back and trying to sell the company.
So the guy is spending a lot of time and money whipping up developers right now. Like the idea that they're still like it might be completely insane, but so far as I can still tell, they're still pushing to get this thing out the door.
But I mean, what Chris says, though, is a very logical scenario. Like, if you want to actually just give yourself room to complete a sale, get that stuff sorted out without any interruptions, this is exactly what you would do. You would kick the BlackBerry 10 release date so far into the future as to be essentially irrelevant.
Right, and they can't say that they're not working on it anymore because that would tip their hand. So they need to say, oh yeah, we're working on it. It's going to come in 2013, and then that gives them all the time they need to do their due diligence on a sale or whatever they're going to do with the company.
Yeah, so the guy that I was saying that I'm live retweeting him, he was joking, but he could actually turn out to be absolutely right.
Yep. That's
pretty crazy. But yeah, I mean, if anybody decides to take over RIM, I think you were the one who made that point, Chris. RIM being an IP holding company, they would do it for the patents, wouldn't they? Exactly as Google did with Motorola. Like you would take over the company and just focus on grabbing hold of all those wireless patents and then keyboard patents, which aren't going to matter so much anymore. Oh man, it's such a sad story. Such a
the BlackBerry 10 keyboard looks like. I mean, like I kind of see what they're trying to do with it, but it looks like a mess. Like I don't want these words popping up all over the keyboard, which is how they have it set up right now.
I think it's weird. No, I think it looks weird. But reaching, I mean, so okay, the autocorrect keyboard on Jelly Bean is really great. It's a huge improvement over what there was there before. But you still have to, reach up to hit the thing, and maybe you could set it on a space, but I don't think so. But to just like when you're typing quickly, your thumb is naturally going to go to the first letter of the next word that you want to put up there, and if that word is just sitting there, just flicking it up, like that, I think seems really fast and cool. Like that impresses me. I like that.
Fair enough.
So there.
Fair enough. Too bad you'll never get to use it on an actual device.
Yeah. Well. Oh well. Maybe I'll crash a BlackBerry Jam. They're on a world tour,
They are. Actually, we sent Dante to the BlackBerry Jam in New York. Was it a week or two ago? And that's where we got our hands on with the keyboard, which is up on the site. If you want to check that out, he's got a video posted and some gallery shots, I believe, so you can get a sense of how that works in the real world. But yeah, I mean, it's so far until we get actual hardware. Assuming we get actual hardware ever, that it's kind of irrelevant right now. And nobody, I mean, like, I'm kind of surprised. I got to admit, as a gadget collector, I'm a little shocked that there hasn't been a cottage industry forming around the resale of these Dev Alpha devices. No one has offered me their Dev Alpha device for princely sum, and that personally upsets me. If you have a Dev Alpha device, email me.
They're out there. I'm sure they're out there.
Yeah, I mean, name your price. I'll give you a few bucks for it. Let me know.
I'll give you $5, $6.
Yeah,
whatever.
Yeah, literally a few bucks. You'll be able to buy yourself lunch with it. No, I mean,
the crazy thing is that Chris is never going to sell these devices. He's actually just going to keep them in his collection.
No, it's
like
true.
This isn't a commercial venture at all.
That reminds me, I need to talk about something amazing that happened the other day. So Nokia reached out to me and said, "Hey, Chris, we're about to recycle a bunch of old devices. Do you want them?" And I said yes. And so they sent me a 3620. I think it's a 3620. I'm looking at them over on the table. I can't read the model number, but it was the one, with the crazy circular keypad, but the Americanized version that had the standard numeric keypad instead, and that's new in box, never been used. And then I also have 3 communicators. I have the E90, the 9000, which was the original, I believe, and the 9300, which I think came out around 2001 or 2002, something like that. And I'm going to try, I have all the chargers for them. I'm going to try to get them working, and hopefully I'll be able to show them off a little bit more. But it is pretty much the most exciting thing happening in my life right now are these Nokias. It's pretty special stuff. So I'm done. I just wanted to share that anecdote.
No,
Thank you, Nokia.
That's a happy, positive anecdote, and we're gonna end on that. So thank you very much for listening.
Let me share a future anecdote.
I tried.
To interrupt you. I'm sorry to interrupt you, man. Come on. And that was way too positive a note to end a show on. Like, it's a combo breaker. We can't end the show on a happy and positive note about unopened, delicious, old school devices. Like, one of these Nokias might even have the original Snake on it. Like, imagine that. I would actually own one of these ancient Nokias just to play Snake on. Like, if anybody,
amazing.
If anybody at Nokia wants to sell me a 5110 with the original Snake on it, I promise, I guarantee you, I will break any record you set on that device.
Oh, so you're a Snake badass? Is that what you're saying? You're a Snake badass?
Oh, yeah, original Snake. Snake 2 and anything after it, forget about it. But the original Snake, yes.
Yeah. Yeah, I definitely wasted a Snake.
What I was going to say, though, to hopefully turn down the tone, I do hope people will be sad about this. I'm going to be missing for the next couple of weeks while I regrow my hair.
You mean your mustache?
Oh, yeah. I'll make an effort to grow a mustache.
I want you to come back. I want you to come back with a Ben Popper style mustache. Anything less than that will be an abject failure on your part, Vlad. I want to make that very clear.
I don't really want to go and compete with Ben Popper. He's rather owning the mustache Verge editor position right now. I mean, that's his throne. I don't want to compete with him on that one.
Yeah.
But in any case, I'm going to be gone for a couple of weeks. I shall be in Bulgaria. I expect real superstars of the mobile industry to replace me as guests. Probably Ross Miller. He'll be suitable. He's superstar material. Yeah.
Ross is good. Ross is good peoples. We'll have to have Ross on.
He's no Vlad. I mean, he can't pronounce beta. So
I'll practice. I'll work on it.
Wait. So that's not that depressing of a note. I mean, like, you're gonna go away. You're gonna get rested.
Yeah. I need watermelon in Bulgaria.
Yeah. So I think that's actually that's a very bright note. That's a happy note.
Well, it should be unhappy for you guys because you'll miss me.
I'm already missing you.
Yeah. Same.
Nice.
You can follow us on Twitter. I'm at Backlon, Chris is at ZPower, and you should tweet at Vlad Savov your favorite watermelon pictures because apparently he's desperate for them. We are all at Verge, and we have got a ton of coverage of Google I/O. We've got a bunch of story streams, a bunch of reviews. You should check it all out at theverge.com. Thanks so much for watching and listening. We will catch you guys next week.
Bye, guys.
Thanks, guys.